That's right. It's Monday night. Sports on the Hill podcast, True Radio Network. Excuse me, CP3 coming to you live from the lab. It's been a while since I've been on the air with Robbie G. It's been about 3 weeks. Glad to be back as always. Appreciate everybody checking us out and tuning in as always. We got a lot to cover from the last 2 weeks. You got CP3 live in the lab. You got Robbie G live from the man cave. I'm having a little issues with my Twitter feed, so I'm going to let Robbie go ahead and start things off. See if I can get my Twitter feed going right now.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'll break down sort of the thoughts of what this podcast is going to be. We got a special guest. Neville wanted to join us live on air, of course. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. We took last week off for Memorial Day, and then the week before, CP3 had the week off, and so we broke it down with the Power Play Point podcast team. We talked a little bit about the hockey, how it all turned out. I just realized that I am not recording this separately on OBS. Hold on.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, there it is. So now it lets you know, by the way, we found that out last week. Anyway, so we recapped last week. It was pretty, sort of sad, but we weren't too hard on the team. But I'll be curious to get your thoughts in just a few moments. And then we talked about the NBA playoffs that look so promising, but at least we didn't get swept, which is good. We'll talk about that with the Wizards Roundtable at about 10 o'clock live tonight and get their take on that series. We'll also talk a little bit of Nats tonight. The last 2 weeks we need to recap, so Carol's going to have the 2-week recap for that. But of course, we're going to start off with our Capitals talk. We'll get Carol's thoughts on the end of the season. We'll also talk about this is the 3-year anniversary of the Washington Capitals winning the Stanley Cup that you see behind Carol and in part of our District of Champions merch as well. So it's still exciting. I know people wanted us to get back there this year, and we thought maybe we could. But we'll talk a little about that and about the future for the Capitals. And we'll also talk about these current playoff series. Right now, there is just a couple of seconds left in this New York Islanders-Boston game with an empty net for Boston. The Islanders are up 5-4 with 3.9 seconds left. And the whistle was called, so be curious to see where the face-off is here. In the Montreal-Winnipeg game that I also have live in the man cave, Montreal is up 2-1, and I'm kind of rooting for Montreal to sweep it. So if you hear the goal horn go off tonight, it's actually set for Montreal, just because, it made it a little bit more fun to have at least a team to get the goal horn going. And I promised Brian that I wouldn't spoil the Islanders-Boston series because he's on delay. But I will probably spoil it in just a second here. But I told him don't tune in until 9:30, so I could. But yeah, a lot of exciting series, both in the North and the West, and we'll break all that down in a minute. But Carol, why don't we start off with your thoughts on how the Capitals season ended to the team that just lost here to Barry Trotz 5-4 in this live game. But Boston has been playing well in these playoffs. And what are your thoughts on the last couple of games for the Capitals?
With the Washington Capitals, fortunately, I missed the great convo you guys had. But it was disappointing, to get put out in the first round to the Bruins. It's on record how much I can't stand Brad Marchand, and he had a decent series for the Bruins, and we wanted the long run. We would have loved to get the Stanley Cup, get another championship. I know I said it a couple of times during the season that I wanted that to happen. But be honest, Laviolette's first year, new system, COVID shortened season, different things going on. So I'm not really mad about the way the season ended. It sucked to get put out in the first round, only winning one game. But I read an interesting article. I can't remember where it was, who wrote it, but they were basically saying after the Great Cup run of 18, there were some wholesale changes that should have been made or considered, and they were like just trying to get hot again and grab a couple of pieces here and there to see if they could rekindle that magic. And with Barry Trotz just defeating Boston Boston with his Islanders to go up 3-2. I feel like that was the biggest mistake, not re-signing him after they won. We had a great couple of debates on the air about it, but just the defense is what was lacking this year. The offense has always been there, and that's what we know is a staple of Barry Trotz. And I think he would have definitely been a difference in it because he knew the right buttons to push. He knew how to get the team motivated, especially with some of the players not here that was on that team in the transition with some of the players that they acquired and were developing and got to play major minutes. And I just think that was the he could have been the bridging gap through the transition that they're going through now with new players and restructuring. We're gonna talk about the off season moves and all of that stuff. So I mean, it's disappointing losing the first round. They had a you know pretty good regular season, which is a staple of the Capitals, but it was disappointing to get put out in the first round. But like I say, first year coach, I'm gonna give your boy, some time. Took Trotz 4 years to get a cup, so I'm not going to expect Laviolette to do it any sooner. And I don't know much about him. I knew more about Trotz watching Nashville because, like I said, I love defense in all sports, and he's always been a solid defensive guy. That's why I wasn't really sold on Laviolette because, granted he's batting teams to the cup, but he's never been to me a strong defensive guy. So that's always something that I look for in the coach of any of the teams that I watch. So it's always next year. Some interesting things going to have to happen in off season, and I know you got some questions, that I definitely love to give my input on. But just another year. I would say is always next year, and try to do it again. And we want to get that feeling back from 2018 because that was a very magical season. As I was telling you earlier today, I was watching the final game of the Stanley Cup when they won it. And I got the last 7 minutes, 8 minutes of the game recorded from when Lars Eller scored the goal, and then just to see the defense and the wanting to see the celebration. I don't know why I decided to watch it last night, but I did, along with the Nats World Series, man. So we'll talk about that and Nats talk after we finish talking Capitals. But yeah,
It's funny as you say that they're doing the handshake line right now over on the channel. So I thought that was kind of funny. They were just replaying on NBC Sports Washington the game, so they're on the handshake line right now. If you tune into that, but yeah, so talk a little bit about your feelings of 2018. I want to reminisce just a little bit, and I'm going to switch up these TVs now that we have different games on. But give me your input and your take on going to the parade and the cup and that whole run, and just how special it is to know that you don't just get right back there.
That season, one of the reasons that we started this show because we got tired of some of the negative spin and folks on the airwaves from DC sports media. So it was amazing to cover this team from the beginning to the end, to go through all the trials and tribulations, and to hear all the other outlets with their doubts and some of the fans complaining and saying something needs to give. And we were I'm not going to speak for. I know I was optimistic about that season because with as much adversity that they faced, they were still playing good hockey. They were getting hot at the right time and doing the right things at the right time, playing defense, blocking shots. You saw Ovi out there, playing 200-foot hockey, playing defense, offense, and contributing whichever way he could, and that sparked everybody else. And you had people stepping up in different situations when needed, and it was just it's like you could see it building from 3 quarters of the season being over and the team starting to lock in. And I had that feeling like, yeah, this could be something nice. This could actually turn into something. And then going down 0-2 to Columbus with the backup goalie in, and then Hopi coming in, double overtime game to stave off going down 3-0, then to win the next 4 games against them, then to finally exercise the demons against Pittsburgh with the great Kuzi goal in overtime to beat them on their home ice, and then to force Game 7 against Tampa Bay, shut them out the last 2 games of the series.
Burakovsky proving all of us wrong in Game 7, showing up.
Yeah, actually showing up, and I know he's playing well for Colorado. Like I said, I never said he was a bad player. I just always say it might need to change the scenery because
Right.
he.
No, we both talked about how that happens in hockey. That happens more often maybe than any other sport, just because in hockey it's such a mental game, and sometimes a fresh start. Uh, I thought that might actually help Holtby. Think about former players. It didn't work so well for him this year, but look at Grubauer, right? I mean, he's playing phenomenal. He's one of the top three goalies in the league now, and
And for the
you know,
Vesna. So yeah,
right.
it's
What are your
definitely.
thoughts on that? Do you think in retrospect would you have tried to keep him? I know that we kind of got rid of him as a way to move the Orpik contract around, but maybe we should have kept Orpik for a year and kept him instead. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's always disappointing to see a player, leave here in any sport and go be successful somewhere else. Like he just had the chance to do that here, it would have been great. But Hopi, Hopi was Hopi. He was who he was, and like you said, he cleared the room to get Orpik, who was a key piece of that run, and they was hoping to get some more of his tutelage to some of the young defensive guys that they had. So I mean, you could always look back in hindsight and say, "Oh, we should have kept him," but I mean, we also the signs. That's why he started the playoffs because we saw how well he could play, and then he got a chance to play, and he showed what he can do for a whole season. So hopefully, with Samsonov, Double V, and some of the guys we saw this year, with all the with the goalie situation that we had, hopefully we can get back to having a steady goalie that's going to be able to lock it down like Hobie, used to for the Caps and how Grubauer is doing now in Colorado. So, like I said, I'm never going to look back and be like, "Oh, I told you so. You should have never did this." I mean, it was a business move. It was something that had to be done at the time, and I'm glad that Grubauer's having the season that he had, and wish them the best of luck going forward in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about the cup for a second. I mean, just an incredible run. I mean, if Reeves wasn't an asshole in game one, maybe we sweep them, So, like, it was a really interesting series. I was very impressed. I was actually going back and listening to the Power Play Point podcast that I recorded right before the last game. We were very superstitious that year. We tried to do like a video or some podcast before each game in the series, and it worked, right? We did one before game 4 and they won, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna do one with Anna and Gil for game 5. And it was just interesting to hear him talk about momentum and how he had to keep things positive and keep things going, and for them to go on the road and win all 4 series as well as come back from being down in each series. Just an incredible run, something that's really never happened in the NHL to that extent. Um, and just what an incredible run, just being able to go to the parade, getting to be able to celebrate it, and just I was so worried that Ovi and Nick would never win a cup. I was just so thankful that I was scared that we would hinder their career or something, like they would play their whole career for us and never win, and I would have found that devastating. And so I'm just happy that they won one, because this proves that this year, every year is so difficult. It's all about fluky, hot goaltending at the right times. And I'm looking at Montreal right now, right? Carey Price looking pretty good now. He's let up 2 goals in this game. I believe it's still tied 2-2. It's at a commercial break right now, but just for him to even be on the brink of sweeping a team as the 4 seed, Carol, in that division, no one saw that coming. And it brings to an important question. So 15 teams in the league pay a players over, I believe it was $8 million, right? Yeah. And of them, all the players except for one are now sitting, on the couch like we are. The only one that was the team that spent the money on goaltending. All the other teams spent it on position players, right? So it's just interesting to see, can a $10 million goaltender shut down other teams, and would it make a difference? And you don't see many contracts that are this big and this successful, but Carey Price has always been great, so I don't want to knock on him at all. But I guess I'm surprised to see that he's the last man standing. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I mean, Carey Price has always been regarded as one of the top goalies in the league. Montreal has always had some issues. Defense has always been one of the things they kind of like the Capitals. They could always score. but not really play defense or hold them to a lead late. But they've made some quality additions, and right now, like you say, when you get in the hockey playoffs, it's a whole different season. You get a hot goalie and a team that's playing well, just like we just talked about with the Capitals in 2018. Excuse me, anything's possible. So I mean,
Right. And it's
just,
tough to
just
sweep. I mean, Montreal's facing this right now. Only 8 shots faced already. Carey Price has given up 2 games. Where Hellebuck on the other side for the Jets, who is a very good, had not been that great in this series, but is very good. He's faced 19 shots and given up only 2 goals. Obviously he's seen more of the puck in the first half of this game. We're now halfway through the game, 9:18 left in the second period. The game is tied 2-2. I also want to. I'm surprised Brooklyn is crushing um, the Bucks right now, 93-64 with about 30 seconds left to go in the third quarter. I know Brian's upset about that. He hates Brooklyn, so he's a big Bucks fan in this because he doesn't believe that there's more than one team in New York. And by the way, I will give them a shout out. They won Coach of the Year for basketball. We'll talk more about that in the NBA segment. But so, I mean, I'm just so thankful that we have the cup to sort of wrap that up. And, the fact that we have this podcast, and if people want to go back and listen to our thoughts on the post game or right afterwards, or interviewing Caps fans, or going to the parade and all the videos, I mean, it's all on our website. It's all on the podcast page. We actually even re-ripped the audio from them and put it on our podcast channel, the new one, when we moved for season 5. So if people ever want to check any of that out, I hope that they go back and listen to it. It brings me great happiness going back, and hopefully we'll get back there again soon. Real quickly, before we end our hockey segment, I do want to go over the current series, how they got there, just real fast, and my thoughts, and then we'll get into some baseball talk with Carol here. So again, we talked about it. The Islanders beat the Bruins tonight. They now take a 3-2 series lead, and game number 6 will be at 7:30 on Wednesday in that series. The Canadians and the Jets right now, the Canadians are up 3-0, and they would also have a game 5 at 9 o'clock in Winnipeg. If Winnipeg is able to hold on and find a way to win this game. The other series, the battle for the Central, is between the Hurricanes and the Lightning, and the Lightning are actually winning that series from the 3 seed, 3-1. The next game in that will be on Tuesday, tomorrow, if you're listening live, at 6:30, an earlier game. And then the Golden Knight are playing the Avalanche. That series is tied 2-2. Game 5 in that series to break the 2-2 tie will be at 9 o'clock. And then again, that game will be in Colorado. So the way that the bracket worked, just real fast, if people missed out, obviously, Winnipeg took care of Edmonton, swept them, which was a big surprise. Montreal came back over Toronto. Toronto had a 3-1 lead, and for the 17th straight season, Carol, they have not gotten out of the first round. And they were the number 1 by a landslide going into the playoffs. A top goalie, I mean, they had 2 teams in the top 15 that they paid for, 2 or 3, I want to say, and they couldn't get it done when it mattered in a game 7. Tampa Bay beat Florida 4-2. The Islanders beat Pittsburgh. So Barry Trotz takes care of his old assistant coach once again, wins 4-2 in that series. Boston beat the Capitals 4-1. Colorado beat St. Louis 4-0. And Vegas won in a game 7 over the Wild in a very crazy series, won that 4-3. Again, Montreal on the verge of potentially sweeping here if they win. Tampa Bay can close out Carolina tomorrow at 6:30. The next game in the Boston Islanders, again, it's Wednesday at 7:30, and then tomorrow at 9 o'clock, we'll see who wins game 5 between Colorado and Vegas. Carol, of the remaining teams, any of them you're pulling for?
I gotta go with my man Barry Trotz and the Islanders. I wouldn't mind seeing the Islanders, Colorado, Stanley Cup, some Capitals, ex-Capitals representing.
That'd be crazy to Grubauer to go against Trotz, right? I mean, that would be a crazy finals.
We've seen a lot of crazy things in the hockey.
Or even if it's Vegas, can you imagine if Vegas comes back and pulls it off, and Trotz faces Vegas again and beats them? Oh my God, they would be Woo, that'd be rough. So the way it's shaping up right now, it's actually pretty easy because of the way the standing shakes out. Before it was gonna be complicated in a reseeding, but because of where all the teams are, basically the winner of the Islanders versus Boston will play the winner of Carolina Tampa Bay, and the winner of the Montreal Winnipeg series will play the winner of Colorado Vegas. To my understanding, just because there was such huge gaps between where the points were and where they ended up. They reseed technically when it goes to the final four, but the way it's going to shape out, it's probably going to be that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We'll give updates throughout the playoffs, just keeping you informed. Maybe not as big of a segment, but it's definitely a lot of great hockey. And I do encourage Capitals fans, if they haven't been paying attention to the playoffs and wanted to turn it off, and I get that, wanting to take a break from hockey, there's still a lot of great hockey to play. I hope that people still tune in and watch it. And it's going to be interesting. It's the last time we're going to see it on the family of NBC. Now Turner Broadcasting has it, and so does ESPN. So going forward, it's going to be interesting to see how that is. I believe the local markets will still stay the same, at least temporarily, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I hope that we get Joe B and Craig and NBC Sports Washington. I hope that they don't change any of that. So, Carol, any final thoughts on hockey before we switch to baseball? Oh, I had a question for you. I never asked the question about. Let me get this in because it's a really interesting one. We can talk more as we get a little bit further. But I wanted to know who your protected list was. So who do we get to protect from this upcoming draft? So the way it's set up in the suggested is you pick 7 forwards and you pick 3 defensemen and 1 goalie. Okay. So the 7 forwards that they suggested way back in April, so it's a long time ago this article was written, was Ovi, Backstrom, Kuzi, Mantha, Wilson, Eller, and Sprong. Now, Ovi we haven't signed yet, so we can get an extra forward that is not included on that list. And I'm taking Kuzi out of this list, and I'm putting TJ Oshie into the list for me. Carol, do you agree? Do you expose Kuzi? Yeah. And so we're exposing Kuzi. We're switching TJ in. So that leaves 1 spot open for Alex Ovechkin because we agree. I think Sprong, Eller, Wilson, Mantha, and Backstrom are all solid. The Ovi one, at least what we were talking about, was going with Connor Sherry because we really like that contract. Is Connor Sherry your last forward, or would you replace any of these other ones, or who else would you want to protect on the forward rank?
You gotta like Sherry for his speed, and you saw what he did all season, especially against the teams that he used to play for. Um, yeah, I'm thinking that like you spoke about the last expansion draft, how they did with TJ, how he stayed unsigned until it was all over, and they signed him after. I'm hoping that's like I said, the logic they had with Ovi, and I say yeah, Sherry would
Is there anybody? So Sherry's that one of the other ones: Mantha, Wilson, Eller, Sprung, Backstrom, or TJ Oshie. Any of them you don't protect, and you want to swap it for somebody else, or do you think that's a pretty solid core?
Mantha, he's under contract, and we did give up, Rana and a draft pick for him. So I mean, I wasn't really too thrilled with his performance in the playoffs.
Who would you replace him with then? Who would you want to protect instead?
I'm still.
Because one thing I have to think about is contract value too. Like, I don't think they're going to take a 4th liner, for example. So why protect them? So you want to protect contracts that you think are valuable to the team.
That's why I'm still conflicted about Kuzi. I still want to keep him, but you got the contract and the last couple of seasons, the way he's played. So I'm still conflicted, but I can't let TJ go. That's why I agree. You flop those 2, but I still want to have a little faith that Kuz can get his game back. But
right, I just think that with that money that you would lose if he leaves, you could easily sign Ovechkin and maybe more pieces.
That's where.
But you'd have to still fill a second center role too. So it's not like you would, but we have some players in the wings, in the minor leagues that can come up. Now, I don't think they're your 2C, but maybe you move people up. Maybe you move a Lars Eller up to 2C,
There you go.
and yeah, and then you can, have, some of your other ones. All right, from the defensive side, their suggestion was Carlson, Schultz, Dillon, or Orlov. So you pick three. Are those, but if you had to pick three out of those four, who would you pick, or would you pick a different three?
Gotta go with Carlson.
It was Schultz,
Orlov,
Dillon, and Orlov. Yeah.
Yeah. Schultz and Dillon. I gotta go with Schultz because he brings a lot more to the table. Dillon, I like him. He's another rough bruiser. You need somebody to drop the gloves, and he plays.
I don't think people are going to take him either. So I kind of agree with your sentiment. Like, I think if you expose Dillon, the likelihood that that's who they're going to take from our team, less. And if they did, I think that's a win for us because there's so many other people that you could. All right, between Sammy or Vitek Vanacek, you can protect one goalie. Who are you protecting?
I have to go with Double V. I still feel bad that they didn't give him a chance, that he got hurt, didn't get a chance to see what he can do in the playoffs. Samsonov played well, but 2 stints on the COVID list, had some injury issues. I wanted to see what Double V could do because we saw what he was doing during the regular season and how locked in he was and how well he was playing. I wanted to see, him get a chance to, try to win the series against Boston instead of having Samsonov in there because I think that would be what made a difference in the game. I feel.
Yeah, I like that idea because I also think Sammy's got so many red flags. It's another player I don't think the Kraken are going to take from us, right? Because I'm like, and I wonder if they would even take Kuzi if he's left exposed because he seems like the ringleader in this situation, right? So from an outsider's perspective, because he's the guy that got Sammy on the COVID list twice. Because Kuzi got it 3 times, Carol. It's crazy. Like that's just
he's going through that, trying to change his lifestyle. So he's not making the best decisions, but he's trying to, find his way after going through rehab and admitting that he had a problem and everything. Addiction is a tough thing, man, especially for an athlete when that might be something that he was used to or he looked at as that was what helped him get make him the player that he was, and now that he doesn't have that, he's probably doubting his talent, doubting his skill set, and other outside issues. So yeah, that's why I say I would love to see him come out of it, but it's a tough situation to be in, especially like you say in the top role as one of the guys that was looked at as one of the up and coming superstars, and then all of a sudden your life's turned upside down and you keep making bad decisions. One or two things are going to happen. They're going to give you another chance, and until they're not anymore, or you're going to get put out of the league, and for not producing and having issues on and off the ice. So it's definitely going to be a make or break season for him wherever he ends up, if he's still here or if he ends up somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you walking through that with me. I thought it would be interesting to see, your thoughts on all of those interesting things. We'll continue to talk about it and maybe modify our lists and stuff like that as we get a little bit closer to when the expansion happens. But I just thought it would be interesting to get your more instant reaction, if you will. But with the next 20 or so minutes, let's break down the last 2 weeks for the Nationals. And then we'll bring Brian in at the end because he's got some thoughts about one of our upcoming teams as well. I'm going to let you rock and roll with this. I will be honest and say I saw 0 Nationals games this week, but I appreciate you helping break it down. And I'm going to go grab a glass of water, but you break that down and I'll be right back.
All right. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch a lot of the games either, but I still went back and looked at highlights and the recap. So I'm gonna go through the scoring recap, trying to share it to some Nats groups that I'm in right now. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, I know we haven't been on the air in a few weeks. Robbie said he broke down the week before when I wasn't able to make it, but We definitely have 2 weeks of Nats to recap. Not too impressive on either one of the weeks. From the week of the 23rd to the 30th, they went 1-5, and then the week of the 31st through the 6th, they went 3-3. So 3-3 is a whole lot better than 1-5. But I guess I'm gonna go ahead and break down this 1-5 week. Just trying to share to some more groups while I'm have the opportunity before I start going over all of these dates because we're gonna do like just a quick run through. There's no reason to rehash games from 2 weeks ago. Then gonna look at the upcoming schedule and along with talk about some of the issues this team is having and why they're not performing to some of the fans' realistic and unrealistic expectations. Let's see. I know I got some more groups to share too, but let me go ahead and get into it now. Nats currently sit 24-32, 8 games under 500. Last place in the NL East, 7 games back of the Mets, who are still leading the division, surprisingly. Well, surprised to me anyway. But going back 2 weeks ago, they had a 3 game series versus the Reds, which they lost 2 out of 3. They had a Sean Doolittle, that's where he ended up going. They had a nice little ceremony for him, reliving the World Series, like we're going to talk about in a little while. Just like we spoke about the Capitals Stanley Cup run a little while ago. First game was a 2-1 loss. Uh, Tyler Mayo, can't pronounce that. Tyler Mayo, I guess it is, one for Cincinnati. He's 3-2. Went 5 1/3, giving up 3 hits, no earned runs, with 2 strikeouts and a walk. Mad Max took the loss. That put him at 4-3. He went 7 innings, giving up 5 hits, 2 earned runs with 9 strikeouts and 1 walk. Lucas Sims earned the save for the Reds. That was his second. He went a third of an inning, giving up no hits, no runs, no strikeouts, and no walks. Josh Bell went 2 for 3 in that game with a solo home run, accounting for the only run that the Nats scored that game. The second game of the series was a rain suspended game that they actually made up the following day, but the Nats won that game 5-3. Austin Voth earned the victory. That was his first of the season. He went 2 innings, giving up 2 hits, no earned runs with a strikeout. Jeff Hoffman took the loss. That put him at 3-4. He went an inning and a third, giving up 2 hits, 2 earned runs with no strikeouts and no walks. And Brad Hand earned the save, his eighth of the season, going an inning, giving up 1 hit, no earned runs, no strikeouts and no walks. Josh Bell went 2 for 5 with an RBI single, and Trey went 1 for 4 with an RBI single. The last game of the series, the Nats lost, got shut out 3-0. Sonny Gray earned the victory for the Reds. He went 1 for 3. I mean, 1 for 3. That puts him at 1-3 at the point in the season. He went 6 innings, giving up 2 hits, no earned runs, with 5 strikeouts and 1 walk. Strasburg took the loss. That put him at 1-2. He went 5 innings, giving up 5 hits, 3 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. Lucas Sims earned the save for the Reds, his third, going 1 inning, giving up no hits, no earned runs, with 1 strikeout, no walks. And they ended up losing that series, losing 2 out of 3 to that series to the Reds. Then, unfortunately, they got swept by the Brewers. Um, First game was a 4-1 loss. Freddie Peralta got the victory for the Brewers. He went that put him at 5-1. He went 7 innings, giving up 4 hits, 1 earned run with 7 strikeouts and a walk. Patrick Corbin took the loss. That put him at 3-4. He went 5 innings, giving up 4 hits with 4 earned runs, 5 strikeouts and 2 walks. Kyle Schwarber went 1 for 3, accounting for the lone run with the solo home run. Second game of the series was a 6-2 loss, which was it was actually a doubleheader because the first game I got rained out. I forgot to mention. So it was only 7 innings. The second game was a 6-2 loss. Brent Suter earned the victory, put him at 5-3. He went an inning, giving up 1 hit, no earned runs, 2 strikeouts and no walks. Daniel Hudson took the loss. That put him at 3-1. He went an inning and a third, giving up a hit, 3 earned runs with 1 strikeout and 2 walks. Zim went 2 for 4 with an RBI single, and Trey had a sacrifice fly, to account for the 2 runs for the Nats. And the last game of the series was unfortunate another shutout, 3-0, just like this series against the Reds ended 3-0. Um, Brandon Wood Woodruff, I think that is, won the game for the Brewers. That put him at 4-2. He went 7 innings, giving up 2 hits, no earned runs, 10 strikeouts, and 2 walks. Mad Max took the loss. That put him at 4-4. He went 6 innings, giving up 2 hits, 2 earned runs, with 10 strikeouts and 1 walk. Josh Hader earned the save, his 12th of the season. He went an inning, giving up 1 hit, no earned runs with a strikeout and no walks. And as I mentioned, they went 1-5 that week. 2 bad series losses to the Reds and the Brewers, 2 Central teams that, yeah, pretty much beat the Nats' butt last week. Rob, I know you say you didn't get the chance to see any games, but what do you think about the Nats 1-5 against the 2 Central opponents from the week before?
Yeah, it's not good. They are digging themselves quite the hole, and I know that the year they won it all, they dug themselves quite a hole and they came back in it. But I don't know. Do you, I guess at the time when they were in such a big hole, we didn't think they could come out of it then either. And I just we need to start putting together some wins. And I know that Brian will be on in a few minutes, but I know he feels the same way about his Yankees. It's kind of lifeless, right? It's just they're going along winning one out of every 3 or 4 games, and it's just not going to be enough to make a real run at it. And the other teams in our division, I mean, it's not like the best division in the world, but they're putting wins on the board, and we're just falling farther and farther behind, and we're going to have to jump so many teams to try to make a run at this.
Yeah, it's still early. I mean, they had 8 games under 500, 7 games out of first. So, I mean, with them being 8 games under 500 and still only 7 games out, it means the top team is only a game above 500. So, and this team has had some injuries, some inconsistencies, some issues at the plate. And like I said, it's a new team. Like I said, we're going to definitely talk about it after our recap last week. We're going to get into some of the issues this team has and why they're not performing how we feel they should be performing after we saw them go on that nice run in 2019. But it's definitely disappointing to see where they are right now. I definitely had higher hopes for where they would be at this point in the season, and definitely didn't see the Mets leading the division at this point in the season. I didn't see the Mets leading the division at any point in the season because they're the Mets, but they're playing some good ball and doing some good things and playing better than that. So I can't talk too much trash about them because they're #1 in the division right now.
Yeah, for sure. All right, why don't you break down the other games, and we'll get Brian to join us for his thoughts as well on the upcoming schedule.
All right, I was just sharing some more because I got so many groups that I shared to, man. It's crazy. Um, Following week, as I said, they went 3-3. Had did I right? Yeah, I did. Okay. They had a 4 game set against the Braves, which we had on. No, that's right. We were off, so we didn't do it. I'm glad I did write those notes. We would have been on the air, but we weren't because it was Memorial Day. Excuse me. I've been working a lot, so yeah, my brain's scrambled a little bit. But that case, they went 4-3, not 3-3, because I didn't count that game when I did my numbers. But they had a 4 game set against the Braves and a 3 game set against the Phillies. They split with the Braves 2-2, and unfortunately lost the series to the Phillies disappointingly because the Phillies were on a bad run, and I figured they would be able to get a sweep. But Harper came back from injury, and he helped spur them on. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. First game of the series versus the Braves was a 5-3 loss. Charlie Morton for the Braves had the victory. That put him at 4-2. He went 5 innings, giving up 6 hits, 3 earned runs with 6 strikeouts and 3 walks. Joe Ross took the loss. That put him at 2-5. He went 5 innings, giving up 3 hits, 4 earned runs with 7 strikeouts and 3 walks. Will Smith for the Braves earned his ninth save on the inning, giving up no hits, no earned runs with a strikeout and no walks. Josh Bell went 1 for 4 with a 2 run home run, and Joe Ross actually helped his own cause with the RBI single, but it wasn't enough because they lost 5-3. The second game of the series was a 11-6 victory by the Nats, and unfortunately, even in that victory, they still had a loss because Strasburg left early with, I believe it was neck tightness and diminished velocity on his pitches. He's back on the injured list. I know a couple of fans were upset, because he felt like I saw one of them said he feel like he has to feel perfect in order to pitch and all this other stuff. Like if you don't feel right and you can't do your mechanics and muscle memory and do all the things the same way every time, then you don't want that pitcher out there because it's going to be a detriment to him health wise and a detriment to your team because you're not going to be getting the top performance out of your top pitcher. So it's unfortunate. He's had some injuries issues in the past and lingering stuff like that. But if you followed him from when he got drafted in the beginning, you knew with him being that size, throwing the way he throws, even though he's changed his throwing motion, you're going to have injuries. And being a pitcher, you throwing the ball so much, it's ridiculous. You're going to have nagging injuries. So I say, folks, chill out. He'll be all right. We saw what he's capable of. You just got to get back to healthy so he can start doing those things again on a regular basis and, put this team on his back like we saw him do. But Austin Voth came in and he earned the victory. He went 3 innings. Well, that put him at 2-0 for the season. He went 3 innings, giving up one hit, 2 earned runs with 3 strikeouts and a walk. Max Fried took the loss. He went 3 and 2/3. No, yeah, 3 and 2/3, giving up 6 hits, 5 earned runs, 7 strikeouts and 2 walks. Zim went 2 for 5 with a 2-run home run. Gomes went 1 for 5 with a 2 RBI double, a 2-run RBI double. I'm sorry. Schwarber went 2 for 4 with 2 separate RBI singles, and the Nats actually looked good that game, even though Strasburg went out. The next game was a 5-3 victory by the Nats. Hudson, Daniel Hudson earned the victory that put him at 4-1. He went in the third, giving up one hit, no earned runs with 3 strikeouts and no walks. AJ Minter took the loss. He puts him at 1-2. He went 1 inning, giving up one hit, 1 earned runs, no strikeouts and no walks. And Brad Hand earned his ninth save of the season, going 1 inning, giving up no hits, no earned runs with a strikeout and no walks. Uh, I didn't list any offensive categories on that one. My bad. And unfortunately, the last game of the series, where the Nats were looking to win the series, they ended up taking the loss, 5-1 loss. That is, Josh Thompson earned the victory that put him at 3-0. He went in the third, giving up no hits, no earned runs with a strikeout and a walk. Patrick Corbin, he took the loss that puts him at 3-5. He went 5 in the third, giving up 6 hits, 4 earned runs with 4 strikeouts and 2 walks. And Villa, the catcher, went 1 for 4 with the RBI single and counted for the lone run against the Braves. It's always good to at least get a split. You would love to get the series win, but it is what it is. That's what we're getting right now from this team. Some inconsistencies, and like we said, 1-5 one week and 3-3 the next week, or 4-3 the next week. It's above 500, but like David said, you got to go 1-0 each day. You can't keep on splitting and having these inconsistencies on a regular basis. Because, like Robbie said, it's not going to get you anywhere come postseason time. Then they had a 3-game set versus Philly. As I mentioned, Philly was on the downslide, and I was hoping they would be able to sweep Philly and be able to, jump over them in the standings and get out the basement. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. First game of the series was a 2-1 victory for the Nats. Mad Max is on the mound. He earned his 5th victory of the season. That puts him at 5-4. He went 7 2/3 with giving up 5 hits, 1 earned run with 9 strikeouts and 1 walk. Zach Wheeler took the loss. He went 4-3. He went 7 in the third, giving up 5 hits, 2 earned runs with 8 strikeouts and a walk. Brad Hand earned the save, his 10th. He went at third of it and giving up no hits, no earned runs, and no strikeouts. Josh Bell went 2 for 4 with the RBI single, and Juan Soto hit a towering home run and went 1 for 4 in that game to account for the 2 runs for the Nats. That was Wheeler's first loss at home And I don't know if Soto and Wheeler had something going on from his days with the Mets, but the commentator picked up on it, and I did too. When the first at bat, Wheeler, struck him out. Second at bat, I don't know if words were said, but when he hit that pitch, he knew it was gone. And I actually saw Soto stare him down going to first base, and then once he rounded the bases, he stared him down as he watched it walk to the dugout. So I don't know if it's some type of. I'm gonna ask Brian when he comes on. 'Cause I know he knows all the inside baseball stuff. He'll probably know if it's some backstory to that. But I'm definitely interested because that's the first time I've seen Soto, that intense, and he was actually talking trash in the dugout after he hit the home run too. So I don't know. Hopefully Brian has some inside MLB info for us because I'm anxious to hear what that was about. The second game of the series was a 5-2 loss by the Nats. Ranger Suarez earned the victory for the Phils. That put him at 1-0. He went 3 innings, giving them no hits, no earned runs, with 3 strikeouts. Joe Ross took the loss. That puts him at 2-6. He went 6 innings, giving them 3 hits, 4 runs, none of those earned. 4 strikeouts and 2 walks. And Connor Brogdon, Brogdon earned to save his first. He went an inning, giving up no hits, no earned runs with 2 strikeouts. Juan Soto had got someone home on the fielder's choice, and Josh Bell went 1 for 4 with a solo home run. And the last game of the series was a 12-6 loss to the Phillies. They had a 7-run fourth inning that was aided by a blown pop up by the second baseman. I forgot to write his name now. It wasn't the regular second baseman. I forgot that his name is in my brain. It just disappeared. Make a long story short, that play led to 7 runs in that inning, which pretty much blew this game open, along with the protective netting around this home plate falling down and causing a 20-minute delay. It was a crazy game up in Philly yesterday for the Nats, but and it was a bad loss, 12-6.
And did I hear that like the Nats had some opportunities later in that game to come back, and they just
They had some men on base, but they just weren't executing when
yeah.
they had them on base. They couldn't get the hit that they needed. Like I said, we've seen that before. They have opportunities to get men left on base when they could have, opened the game, busted the game open, or got some runs to make it a closer game to put some pressure on the opposing team. But yeah, there were a few opportunities. I think they had 2 on with 1 out, and just they lined out. I think they lined out to the third baseman, because they had the shift on. So it's just the ball not falling their way right now. They're getting opportunities, they're just not capitalizing on them as we've seen them do before, especially in that great World Series run where they was so efficient with 2 outs, and no game was over no matter how late in the game it was. They would find a way to get that hit that they needed, or make that play that they needed to get the other team off the field. So yeah, it's a little frustrating. Like I said, 8 games under 500. You know that they aren't playing their best baseball.
For sure. Well, let's bring Brian in now, and we could talk about this upcoming week with him. And Brian, first of all, welcome back to the show. I'm sorry that
Thank you.
your Yankees are going through a frustrating time, and but it's a tough time for all of us baseball fans, I guess. So misery loves company. So
Yes.
I appreciate you. I'm sorry that Brooklyn is crushing the Bucks in this game.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a spoiler for you.
No, I am well aware of the fact that Brooklyn is killing them right now.
Yeah. So, so we've got a couple of games coming up, but real quickly, your fast thoughts on how the Yankees are doing, and then I'll ask you some questions about the upcoming schedule.
Yankees are not doing well at all right now. They just had a 7-game homestand against 2 of their main competitions for the division, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Red Sox, and they finished that homestand 2-5. They got swept by the Red Sox this weekend. They just look absolutely lifeless. This is honestly some of the most lifeless baseball I've seen the Yankees play in my time as a fan. And I still believe there's a lot of time to turn it around, and I think they absolutely need to make some sort of move. I don't know if that's making some sort of coaching change or something like that, or making a trade, but I would make some sort of move now before the season gets out of hand. They're in fourth place right now in the AL East, which is one of the most competitive divisions in the league. We're going to talk about Tampa Bay in a minute, how good they are. It's a tough division, and you don't want to fall any further behind than they already have. So hopefully they can turn it around, and there's still a lot of time. But yeah, it hasn't been a good couple of weeks for the Yankees, and punctuated by the sweep this weekend at the stadiums at the hands of the Red Sox.
Yeah, so you now know Tampa Bay pretty well. The first two
Yes.
opponents are Tuesday and Wednesday at Tampa, both at 7:10. What are some of your thoughts on that team, and what can the Nationals do to try to get some wins here?
Tampa Bay is really good. They have the best record in the American League right now. And they're in first place, obviously, in the American League East. They just played the Yankees last week in a 4-game series. And I'm really impressed the Yankees actually even won 2 games in that 4-game series, because the Rays are really good and the Yankees always struggle against Tampa Bay. So the pitcher for the Rays in Tuesday's game is Tyler Glasnow, and he is without a doubt one of the up-and-coming best pitchers in this league. He's really good. He's got nasty stuff. I'm not sure who's pitching for the Nationals on Tuesday, but they're going to have their hands full against Glasnow for sure on Tuesday. And keeping the Tampa Bay lineup at bay, it's going to be tough, because they have a lot of really pesky guys that just they're not really. They have one of the smallest payrolls in the league, yet they're still one of the best teams in the league. As much as I detest the Tampa Bay Rays, I am impressed with what they do with all their limited resources. And they're a good team. And then on Wednesday, hopefully Corbin can pitch a good game against McClanahan, I think his name is, for the Rays. That's a more favorable matchup, I think, for the Nats. I think they're going to split these 2 games. I would love if the Nationals could win both of them. But
the Tuesday game is John Lester, by the way.
John Lester. Okay. That's a good matchup, Glasnow versus Lester. It still favors Glasnow, but the Wednesday matchup is definitely a little bit more favorable for the Nats. If they are going to split, I would think they'd win the Wednesday game. Yeah.
Got it. Do you know anything about San Francisco? The Nationals play Thursday and Friday, both at 7:05, Saturday at 7:15, and then Sunday at 1:05 in a matinee game. So it's 4 games back at Nats Park against San Francisco. Do you know much about them?
I actually know a little bit about San Francisco. They are, I believe, they got off to a really good start this season. I'm not sure if they're still in first place in their division, but they were in first place for a while. Their division's really good. They have the Padres, who are the team in the National League that I like to watch the most, and the Dodgers, who are, of course, the defending World Series champions. They've got Kevin Gausman, who's been really good. He's a former Oriole. Tim's going to love that. He's a former Oriole who's doing great for the Giants this season. And they've got Mike Tauchman, who's a former Yankee, who's their starting left fielder, who's been really good for them as well since they got him from us in a trade earlier this year. So I keep my eye on the Giants a little bit because they have Tauchman, but they've been off to a good start too. I think that 4-game series at Nats Park will be a good test this weekend, and a good chance to hopefully get back into this race. You're right, Robbie. They got to start winning games, and they got to start winning games now.
And then Pittsburgh next Monday, we'll have a live because that game starts at 7:00, and so I assume we'll go back to starting with Nats Talk next week at 7:00. So or not at 7:00. Sorry, we start at 9:00 now. 9:00. So that game will be in the latter third of the game. What are your thoughts on Pittsburgh?
They're not good at all. Pittsburgh is like permanently rebuilding. So hopefully, I mean, I know for a fact they have to be in. I don't even have the standings in front of me, but I know for a fact Pittsburgh is probably in last place in their division. They are not very good. They don't have a ton of talent. They trade most of their talent. If they get any talented players, they usually end up trading them. So I think the Nationals will probably take care of Pittsburgh at least.
Yeah. Carol, what are your thoughts on Tampa Bay, San Francisco, and Pittsburgh?
As Brian said, Tampa Bay and the Giants are both playing good ball. The Giants are 15 games over 500 in first place, and Tampa, Brian's checking them out. They're in first place in their division also. So this is going to be a gut check for the Nats this week. That I say 3-3 would be a good thing for this team this week if they could get some consistent performances from the offense and from the pitching. Aside from Mad Max, uh, Joe Ross, every now and again you haven't really have any consistent solid pitching, and something has to give soon, especially with Strasburg on the IL again. But this is definitely going to be a interesting week for the Nationals. I just look now; they're in fourth place, so I think Philly is now in last place in the division. But I mean Miami. I think Miami lost earlier. I was watching that game to Boston, so I think Miami is now in the basement, and the Nets are now still 8 games under 500. But in fourth place, if they could get some momentum from playing these two quality opponents and actually put some good baseball together, this could be something that could spark them to hopefully start going on a run, or at least getting some consistent victories, or it can be a horrible 1-5 week that puts them in a very very bad spot this early in the season. So
Yeah, the Nationals are 3-7 in their last 10, but they are no Miami, who's 1-9. So it could, for Nats fans, it could be worse. And but Philadelphia is 5-5, Atlanta is 5-5, and the Mets are 7-3 in their last 10. Just to give a sense of where it's been since our last show. So it's going to be rough, but I'll be excited to talk baseball during a baseball game next week with you, and then we'll probably flip it up 7 o'clock. Do Nats talk, and then maybe 7:45. I'll do like 10 minutes of recapping where the hockey playoffs are, and then at 10 o'clock we might do a little bit of NBA, where they are now. And then I'm letting our listeners know I'm taking the following week off, so Carol will have to do a baseball show without me for that one. But I'm going to be in Texas on my first trip outside, on an airplane in a very, very, very long time. So I'm excited. But yeah, no, it's been good to talk Nats again. Brian, thank you for helping us break down the upcoming week. Carol, any final thoughts before we switch gears?
nah, like I said, this is gonna be an interesting week for the Nats. Hopefully, I'll be able to check out some of the games and be back to recapping next week and see what these Nats can do to try to get back on the positive side of the 500.
Sounds good. All right. Well, with that, I mean, we're pretty much right on time here. So we're going to switch over for the second hour. We're going to talk a little bit of basketball. I'm going to bring my full team in now. And we'll talk about the good and the bad for the Wizards. I'm not sure if Arun is joining us tonight or not, but either way, the four of us can definitely break down the wins and the losses for this. I'm just checking one thing real fast. Let's see. Okay. All right. I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to share my screen. Well, actually, I'll introduce you guys first and then I'll share the screen. So, DC's People's Champ, how are you doing tonight?
As you can see, I am here at the beautiful new People Studios in Alexandria, Virginia. It's a little different look than what you're used to, but it's a new look and I'm happy about it. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. No, you look great. I'm happy that you're in your new digs and it's working out. So that's all good. And yeah, I mean, I wish that we had something a little better to talk about, but I'm super excited that we're not talking about a sweep of the Wizards because we could have been. So that's all good. But Tim, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Happy that the Wizards weren't swept, like you said, and excited that we get to talk one win. Could have been zero. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Bright side.
Exactly. And Brian, I'm sorry about your Knicks. It was that Hawks team is brutal, and
Yes.
I think they're a lot better than a lot of people want to give credit to. We'll talk in a little bit about how they're actually doing some damage in the second round. But do you want to give your final thoughts real quickly on the Knicks? And then I'm sure you'll give a greater talk about it on your podcast. Did you release one today?
I did release a podcast today, and I released one on Friday too, after the Knicks season ended, where I went into really great detail of my love for this Knicks team and how I'm still proud of them, even though the season ended in 5 games. It's disappointing, but this was really a great season. It was a return to the Knicks are back basically. The Knicks are back after this season, and I'm really excited for the future. Tom Thibodeau won Coach of the Year today, which I'm so happy about.
I alluded to that in my open, by the way. So
I'm so happy about that. That just made my day, month, week, year. I'm so happy for Tom.
Well
Thibodeau.
Deserved. He incredible.
Look, all due respect to Monty Williams and the Phoenix Suns for what they accomplished, but nobody expected what the Knicks did this season. And Tom Thibodeau deserves all the credit in the world for making that happen. He deserves Coach of the Year. I'm glad he won. And like I said, I'm proud of this Knicks team for everything they accomplished this season, and I can't wait for next year. The Knicks are back.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the coach of the Suns thinks. I mean, they were able to get by the Lakers, so he's probably not too upset right now.
He might still win the championship. That's a good consolation prize.
Yeah, exactly. So that Suns team, Booker is incredible. We'll talk about him in a few minutes, but just a monster. And is unfortunate with the injuries for the Lakers, obviously, but I'm excited for the Suns, and I'm excited that in the Western Conference, no teams remain that have ever won a championship before. So that means whoever comes out of the West, I believe, has a real opportunity to win their first championship in their franchise history, which is kind of exciting. I know, Brian, we were talking about that offline earlier.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's really interesting that there's all these title droughts. The most recent championship of the teams remaining is the Philadelphia 76ers in 1983. So it's a long time for all these teams.
Yeah, I would say almost all of it since we've been born, but I believe Champ was born, in that era. But just barely.
Thanks, appreciate it.
No problem. Let's use that as our segue to get into some basketball games, and then we'll break down some of the other series as well, because it's really exciting around the NBA. And just like I hope that Capitals fans turn on some hockey going forward, I hope that Wizards fans continue to watch some of this basketball. But let me share my screen real fast, and we'll break down these games. We'll do the losses kind of quickly, and we'll do the win with great detail, and we'll move on. So when we last left off, it was after game 1, so we lost 125 to 118, and then on the Wednesday game was the 76ers started off very strong, outscoring them 35-24, continued to outscore them by 3 in the second. It was an even third. And the 76ers actually piled on 11 more points at the end to win 120-95. Bradley Beal had 33. Russell Westbrook had 11 and 10 and assistant points. Only 6 rebounds. I say only as a guard, that's still pretty good. But Rui Hachimura didn't have his best game. Only 11 points, 7 rebounds. Gaffer had 11 points. Ish Smith had 11 points. But the reality was it was just the 76ers just put on a show. Joel Embiid, 22. Simmons, 22. Harris had 19. And just overall a frustrating game. I'm going to let each one of you guys give your quick take on it, and then we'll move on. I'll start off with Champ. Whoops, I realize I have not. Sorry, I have to Zoom meeting and exit. There we go. I realized that people weren't on the screen. All right, now we are. All right, Champ, what is your take on this game?
Well, this game showed that the 76ers, there's a reason why they were the number 1 seed in the East. They're a very physical team. They run fast. And if you're a team that is very poor on defense against a team like this who plays extraordinary defense, you're not going to win this series. And I felt that when we advanced to the series, I felt that this is not a series that this team could win because they're not very good on defense, and the 76ers are great on defense, and it showed. And then you look at the stat right here under 3-pointers. 9.1% from the 3-point line. That is not going to win you a lot of games if you're missing from that. If you're missing from there, and then the free throws weren't very good. All in all, this first game was not a very good game on any side of the ball. 76ers just had this team's number from beginning to end. It wasn't even close. And I mean, this was not a great way to start the series, but it's indicative to show why the 76ers are the number one seed in this conference.
Yeah, this was the second game in the series. We actually recapped the first one before. The first game was actually fairly close, which gave me hope for this game, and this game was not that close. Tim, what were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this game was highly disappointing just because the Wizards played so well the end of the season, and kind of their MO was they would often get behind like this in the first half, but they would play really hard in the second half and come back and either win or make the game close. And they just had a really bad second half. I mean, it really started kind of in the middle of the second quarter. The 76ers pulled away, and I thought the Wizards would have a really good second half, play extremely hard because, like you said, the first game was close and they had a great finish and they showed a lot of heart, but the second half was just lifeless. And the Wizards, besides just the stars, Beal, Westbrook, the rest of the team really didn't play with nearly enough intensity, especially the first three games. And I don't know why they weren't ready, but just they needed way more energy to compete with the 76ers until Embiid was hurt at least. So just kind of a disappointing effort. But, I mean, this series was such a mismatch. I don't know if it would have mattered. It's just you would like a little bit more fire in crunch time.
Yeah, the defense just isn't there, and it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see if we give the coach an extension. There are rumors out there that we are going to give the coach an extension, but I don't know how much I put faith in any NBA rumors. But I guess I'll ask this to Brian. Do you think we get rid of the coach, or do you think you stick out with it for like another year to let him play out the Westbrook contract, or maybe a year or two? Because Westbrook, I think, has a player option. What are your thoughts on the current coaching situation as it pertains to defense, especially in this game?
Well, it's funny we talk about this because we thought all season for sure Scott Brooks was going to go. Like no matter what, whether they made the playoffs or not, we all seem to think that Scott Brooks was going to go. But it seems like Russell Westbrook wants Scott Brooks to stay. So if you got to take that into consideration, I feel like Russell Westbrook is one of your most important players. Like you traded for Russell Westbrook. It was a huge trade for your franchise. That's something you got to keep in mind. But there are a lot of questions, I think, with Scott Brooks. Even though I'm not a Wizards fan, I understand the frustration that a lot of Wizards fans have watching Scott Brooks coach. The substitution patterns, the defense, it gets tiring a lot of the time. Like the guys who are playing down the stretch that shouldn't be playing. I get the frustration for sure. And a lot of that showed in this game. The Sixers were the better team all series, clearly, and Doc Rivers also outcoached Scott Brooks, I thought, in this series as well. And it proved in this game too. It wasn't even close, really.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's. I think we've beaten this game to a dead horse, so I'm gonna go and go to the next game, which was like as bad, if not worse. So we'll go through this one quickly. So you can see by the score at the top there. So they outscored us by 8 in the first, outscored us by 6 in the second, and then they outscored us by 9 in the third, and then outscored us by 6 in the fourth. So it's just bad. 132-103 overall. Again, Embiid just like had his way with our team. 36 points from the center position. It's kind of incredible. But Ben Simmons only had 14 points. Harris had 20. Green had 15. But again, you don't need that many people to score a lot if your center can score 36 points. The Wizards had Bradley Beal, scored 25. Westbrook had a triple-double, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, and 26 points overall. He's like soaring up the playoff triple-double leaderboard, but that's not enough. Gafford played okay. Ish Smith played okay. Rui had 10 points. Bertans had 8 overall. Just not so great. This time I'm going to start with Tim. Tim, what was your take on this game?
I just think Bertans, besides Game 4, had a terrible postseason overall, and he had 0 points last game, which we should have really made fun of him for. 8 points in 2 games, just terrible for all the money that he makes, and he was still playing and taking shots, so it's not like he just sat and wasn't hurting the team, but just the effort was terrible. The crowd was really bad, honestly. I know it's not necessarily the fans' fault because the team was awful and it was only like 5,000 or 6,000 fans, but I turned the game on like ESPN. You couldn't hear really anything. And
there's a lot of 76ers fans there too.
Yeah, I mean, you heard that, but although
if only 5,000 let in, it's like 50-50, and you're only talking about like 2,000 Wizards fans,
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't look good on TV, and it didn't really help the team, so that was disappointing. But I mean, I guess they had a playoff game at home. They won one of them, so
yeah, they actually
but
got 3 home playoff games, right? In the play-in one,
yeah,
and then 2
that's
this.
true.
So that's way better than we were thinking a couple of weeks ago.
But yeah, I'm not going to say the Wizards have the best home fans in general. And it didn't help when there was a quarter of them and then a half of those. So that's an eighth filled with Wizards fans that aren't that diehard.
Yeah, exactly. It was frustrating.
So this game was just, bad from the start. Like you said, never close, never felt close.
Champ, what are some of your thoughts on this one?
First of all, I want to give props to Tim for his crowd map. That was epic, my friend. That was very epic. This game is horrible. Absolutely. There's nothing else I can say. This is a horrible game. Terrible game from start to finish. And again, it shows the Wizards, one of their key strengths was points in the paint. But as you can see here, 76ers kind of nullified that and added on to that with their own points in the paint. With Joel Embiid going off. A center going off on you says a lot about you as a team, especially your front court, if the center can go off for 30 plus. And you can't rely on your backcourt to ride the wave against a team like this with such talent, such as Embiid and Simmons and all that. I mean, and then for them to be as physical as they are, for them to be as defensively sound as they are, this was just a horrible game all the way around. There's nothing else really to say about it. Even if it was 100% Wizards fans in that stadium, there was no way that this team could match up with this team defensively the way that they played, period.
Yeah. In fact, we basically had to have Embiid be injured to even give ourselves a shot in this series. I'll let Brian give his quick take on this one, and then we'll turn the page.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Embiid is a monster. He's without a doubt. It's him and Jokic are the best centers in the league. I mean, they're just absolutely dominant, and I'm not surprised that he torched the Wizards in this game. Honestly, the highlight of this game for me, I mean, the Wizards got absolutely smoked. The highlight of this game for me was probably the fan running onto the court and trying to touch the rim, and he got tackled very quickly. And he tried to give Beal a hug too, right? That was probably the highlight of the game, honestly. The bad fans have been the star of the NBA playoffs so far. A lot of bad fans all over the place. And this game was no different. So that's my quick little recap of the game. Bad loss for the Wizards.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. Well, let's get into the better game. 76ers still outscored us in game 4 in the first quarter, 31-28. But luckily, the Wizards come back and outscored them by 2 in the second quarter. And then they really play a great third quarter. Outscored them 32-19. But they almost let it get away from them in the fourth quarter. But luckily, they held on for a 122-114 win. The theme was Joel Embiid got hurt, and then they did Hack-a-Simmons, and it kind of worked to give them a big enough lead to hold on to win. But it's like crazy to me that you got to rely on their top player and center getting hurt and the fact that Hack-a-Shaq still works in the current NBA system. They have changed the rules, so if you do it in the final 2 minutes, it's an intentional foul or whatever. But up until 2 minutes, they took advantage of this, and luckily Bradley Beal went off for 27. Russell Westbrook had an astounding triple-double, 21 rebounds from the guard position, 14 assists and 19 points. We also didn't have to compete with Embiid for rebounds, which is helpful. And Lopez had a good game too. Just a solid game from a lot of players. There were 7 players in double figures, and they barely kind of hold on and win this game. I'm going to go to Champ first. Champ, what were your thoughts on this game?
So yeah, this was clearly the better game in terms of the result, especially because of the fact that they used that third quarter with Embiid being out on the sidelines with injury to charge ahead and ahead as much as they could. But again, the key stat that you can look at is 3-point shooting. Their 3-point, and it's crazy because I said this at the beginning of this season. I said, we got 3-point shooters on this team. We got Westbrook, Beal, Bertans. You're thinking they're going to be lighting up from 3-point land. They barely make 50% from 3-pointers. And again, when you're not making those type of shots, it's kind of hard to keep at bay a team that plays this well defensively. So this is one of those like lucky games for them that they caught the 76ers on an off night without their big star in the middle, and they were able to take advantage and be able to at least avoid the sweep, which is, I think, I don't want to call it a moral victory because there should be no such thing as moral victories, but that's somewhat of a win to avoid getting swept as the A seed against the number 1 seed in the conference.
I believe in moral victories. I said it from the beginning of this series. If we could win one, I'd be happy because we weren't supposed to be here. We had a 2% chance in April of even making it this far. And I think you could learn a lot from a series like this, and at least you prove that you should be there, right? I mean, if you get swept, then in my mind, maybe you shouldn't have been there, right? And so, especially in basketball, I think in hockey, a sweep is, I don't want to say less demoralizing, but that could just be like a hot goaltender or whatever. But a sweep in basketball, I mean, that's pretty embarrassing. So I'm happy that it didn't happen. Tim, what were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I agree. It is a moral victory in a sense to not get swept. They were huge underdogs. 1-8 in the NBA is a huge mismatch, especially compared to something like hockey or even baseball playoffs. I mean, there are a lot of sweeps. Even Milwaukee, Miami, that was a much bigger mismatch than even this series. So this is one of the highlights of the year for the Wizards. I think we crapped on Scott Brooks for good reason a lot, like the whole season really, and he deserves it. But he had a good 48 hours before Game 4 because clearly he kind of lit into the Wizards during practice. He made it very simple. He just said, everybody has to play extremely hard tonight. It doesn't matter who you are. I will bench you if you don't play hard. And they got the result with a lot of luck. They probably never were going to win more than 1 or 2 games, even if, best case scenario. But at least Brooks got the Wizards to play hard. And he finally figured out that Gafford was the big man for this series. He benched Len. He didn't play Lopez that much, which helped. But I think what he really found out was Gafford should get a chance to start next year. He looked great at the end of this series. And also, I think Rui played really well, and these were big playoff minutes for him. So the Wizards will get a lot out of this series, even though they lost. And I think Brooks showed a little something at the end there.
I agree. All right, Brian, what are your thoughts on this one huge victory for the Wizards?
I mean, I actually agree in the sense that it is a moral victory, and I agree that there are moral victories, and that this is definitely one of them. You don't want to get swept. You absolutely don't want to get swept, especially on your home floor, even if it is 50% Sixers fans. You don't want to get swept on your home floor. Embiid getting hurt obviously helped. But I agree with Tim that Gafford needs to start next year. He needs to be the center moving forward. We can't forget about Thomas Bryant either. He suffered the injury early in the season. He's going to be coming back, so the Wizards are going to have to figure out what to do with him in addition to Gafford, Lopez, and Len. But I like that Scott Brooks ripped into the team because it clearly worked in this game. And Embiid getting hurt definitely helped, but it's a good win. It's good to not get swept. It's satisfying, I would say, to not get swept. Gentleman's sweep, if you will, to lose in 5.
Right. No, I think it's big. I mean, I remember being there in the Stanley Cup in '98 and watching another team hoist in our building and know that we didn't even win a game. We probably should never have been there. And that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. You know, I always say it was the best game I ever went to and the worst game all simultaneously because it was cool to see the cup, but you know, to get swept is heartbreaking in any round. So, so I'm happy about that. All right, I'm going to go super speed through this one. Basically, it was even after 1, gave me a lot of false hope. They outscored the Wizards by only 2 in the second. So I was like, oh man, we're doing really well. And then in the third, they outscored us by 7. And then in the fourth, they outscored us by 8. And then they ultimately opened up a pretty big, sizable victory by the end, outscoring us 129 to 112. So again, it was close in the first half, but I think part of that is the fact that they were still playing without Embiid. Dwight Howard played pretty well coming out of that. Harris obviously putting up 28 points. Seth Curry putting up 30. Ben Simmons, the hack-a-shack routine didn't work as well in this game. Just got scoring throughout. For the Wizards, Bradley put up 32. Rui actually had, I think, his best game of the series, put up 21. Russell Westbrook almost had a triple-double, just 2 rebounds shy, 8 rebounds, 10 assists, and 24 points. I thought the Wizards played well, and 112 points is nothing to scoff at, but once again, the problem is on the defensive side. I'm actually going to go reverse order this time. Brian, from an outsider's perspective, what are your thoughts on the loss?
I mean, I didn't watch this game because it was at the same time as my team getting eliminated from the postseason as well. But yeah, it's tough, obviously, to lose, especially with Embiid out. I think they tried their best. Like you said, 112 points is, a great effort. But the Sixers are just a better team. Tobias Harris, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the league. He should have been an all-star this season, and he stepped up big time in Embiid's absence. Simmons, I meant to say this about Game 4, but I like the strategy of putting him on the free throw line because he absolutely sucks from the free throw line. He can't make a free throw to save his life, but he did play really well in Game 5. Curry, Seth Curry.
I forgot to mention he had a triple-double. He had 10, 11,
yes.
15.
Yeah, he's a beast. He was the number 1 pick in the draft for a reason. He's a very good player. He just can't make free throws. That's the only flaw in his game. And Curry, of course, is great for the Sixers as well. Steph's brother, Seth Curry. It's disappointing, obviously, to end the season, but I would say if I could say anything to Wizards fans from the outsider's perspective, it's that you guys had a great season, a great great run to get here. It took a lot of wins in that second half just to even get to this point. So you really should be proud of what you accomplished this season. Is what I would say.
Right. There is some talk on Wizards forums and chatter about the fact that Westbrook's value is now at a high, much higher than they could have ever imagined that getting. You could probably get a pretty big return for him right now. Do you think you still continue to play it out, or do you think you take the big return and maybe get 2 or 3 players back for him?
I would keep Westbrook personally, but I get that logic in the sense that his value is going to be really high, and it is. I mean, he has bounced around a little bit now. If he did move, that would be his 3rd team in 3 years. So Westbrook is known to move around.
It depends also whether you're going to walk away from the coach, because if he loves that coach and you're going to walk away anyway, then you may as well get something in return for him.
If they do get rid of Brooks, I think it is something to consider for sure. But I was the one who said the Westbrook trade would work out well for them, and it did this season. So I would personally keep Westbrook or try and keep Westbrook and try and build with what you have and try and build around Beal, build around Westbrook. But that is an interesting point that, yes, you're right. His value is going to be really high after a great season like the one he had this year.
Yeah, so I'll go to Champ next. Same sort of question. What were your thoughts on this game? And then what do you do with the coach and the star player going forward?
All right, so I actually had to listen to this game on the radio because I hadn't gotten my cable locked in yet because I had just moved in here like 2 days prior. So I hadn't gotten my cable, so I had to listen. So it's the first time in a long time that I actually listened to a basketball game. And from what I was listening to, it just seemed like they kept it close as much as they could. It's just that it seemed like the 76ers had a little extra to them as opposed to the Wizards. I think the other thing that kind of helped was that this was the night that they actually had a full capacity crowd in Philly in the Wells Fargo Center for this game, which was the first time in a long time they had a full capacity crowd present for a game. So they really had the home court advantage, which kind of played a bit of a role in it. But I gotta agree with Brian that as a Wizards fan, you are proud that the fact that just 2 months ago this team had 2% chance of even making it this far, and yet they made it into the main playoffs as the 8th seed and won a game in the playoffs after only having a 2% chance. So it's good and it's something to build on. When it comes to Scott Brooks, I'm still very much on the fence with him because my problem with him is, and it's been his problem since he's been the coach, this team has no defensive identity. Unless you call their defensive identity giving up over 100 points every game and trying to keep up. And at that point, I would want him gone because I want somebody who's going to keep teams under 100 points, and we're averaging over 100. But if that means we're going to risk losing Westbrook and we're not going to get nothing for it, maybe ride it out one more year and hope and see if he can figure out defense. And if after next year he can't figure out defense, get him out and get somebody in here who can get this team to play defense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at most, I'm giving him the length of Westbrook's contract, 1, maybe 2 years, depending on how that all plays out. But I do see the conversation where the value is at an all-time high, and I'm not sure this is working. It really depends on what you're going to get in return. I wouldn't take, if you're going to get like a king's ransom for him, then I think you make the move. But I think if you think that teams are like, oh, we don't value him as high as you guys are, and you're only going to get a couple of things back for him, then I do think that you play it out. But it's interesting. I mean, we basically have to make the playoffs again next year for it to make sense, and if we don't, then I think it didn't. So it's very binary to me, and it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. Tim, what are your thoughts on this game and then the future of the coach and the star player?
Well, this game in particular, obviously a disappointing second half. 76ers really pulled away, shot the ball really well when it mattered. But it was better than the first 3 games of the series. The effort was there. It was a really close game at halftime. I had some hope that the Wizards would keep it close and maybe pull out a victory. But just the Wizards couldn't win in Philadelphia the whole year. Like the champ said, they had a good home crowd, so the Wizards never really got the momentum, never got going. I mean, the 76ers, they're also really deep. That Turkish guy, Korkmaz, killed the Wizards. Tobias Harris killed the Wizards. He's still mad that people thought Jimmy Butler was better than him and should have been kept over him. So he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. But in terms of the future, I like Champ's kind of second idea, which is ride it out for a year or two. The fact is, if they trade Westbrook, Beal will be really upset. I think you have to think about what Beal's mindset is. He wants to go all in next year, at least as much as they can. The first half of this season should have just be basically thrown in the garbage heap because you had COVID, you had Westbrook not fully healthy, not used to the team, and vice versa. There was enough promise the second half of the year with Westbrook, with the team getting better, that I think you have to give the Brooks, Westbrook, Beal team another year or two, and it's not really high risk to me. Like Brooks has a losing record as the Wizards coach. You don't have to pay him top dollar. He was already getting paid too much, really, like top 10 in the league. He didn't deserve it. I think he would take a year or two kind of prove it deal, because I don't know how many other teams are like clamoring for his services right now. So let's see what happens next year. If it doesn't work, just, blow it up after next year.
Yeah, so it's a very short window that we're giving them, and that makes some sense. All right, well, let's get into the playoff bracket in general real fast, and we'll pull this up here. Yeah, it's been a pretty. Let me see if I can Can people see that whole thing? No, I don't think so. Hold on. I'm going to resize this a little bit on the fly. All right. Utah crushed Memphis. They won that series 4-1. The Clippers-Dallas series was very close. The Clippers won that in the 7th game. And so now Utah will play the Clippers in the next round. The Denver-Portland, Denver beat Portland 4-2. And Phoenix kind of crushed LA. They beat them 4-2, but just a lot of injuries to the champs there. So Denver will play Phoenix. So all the 4 top-seeded teams moved on in the West, and in the East, Philly, we've talked about it, beat us, and then the Knicks, Brian, lost to Atlanta, and so that was a 4-1 series, also not very close. The other 2 series were not close either. Milwaukee won 4-0 over Miami. Brooklyn won 4-1 over Boston. Again, pretty much, a lot of the higher seeds, 5-4 games are always very close. Moved on, and but Atlanta has won the first game of that Philly series. Brooklyn leads now 2-0 over Milwaukee, and right now we're having this first game of the Denver Phoenix game. I wanted each one of you guys to take one series that you've seen in the past, in round 1, other than the Wizards Philly series, that you liked or found interesting. And then I'll go around the table, and then I'll also ask each one of you one series you're excited about in the upcoming conference semifinals. So I'm going to start off with Tim. Tim, of the other series, what did you find the most interesting in the first round?
Well, I obviously have to leave the Knicks one for Brian, so I'm not going to pick that. I like Portland, so I'll choose that one. Definitely a disappointing series for them. But I would say probably the best playoff game so far was Game 5 of this series, where it was double overtime, or maybe double overtime, I believe. And Lillard had over 50 points in a loss, and it was a great back and forth series. Especially the first 5 games were very close. A lot of road wins and just epic fourth quarters. This is one of the better series, I would say, in the first round, and a lot of people missed it because it's all late games. But Denver is looking great despite the injury to Murray. They have Jokic. He's going to win MVP. He's playing amazing, and they have some other players really stepping up, including they have Rivers, right? So yeah, former short-time Wizard. Rivers,
former short-time Knick too.
Yeah, exactly. So they're looking great, but Portland is a team in transition. People are saying crazy things like Lillard could go to New York or a lot of different places, but they need to figure out what's going to happen with the team around Lillard. Are they going to keep him? How can they be more competitive in the deep West? So I enjoyed that series. Kind of disappointing for the Trailblazers, but Denver's moves on, and they're an exciting team.
Yeah. Champ, what other series interests you in the first round?
I gotta talk about that Phoenix Lakers series simply because of the fact. I mean, I knew mostly about the series because that was all that everybody was talking about on social media. Because of the fact that the Phoenix Suns were washing the Lakers in the series, and everybody kept talking about it. How This is the first time in LeBron's career that he got ousted in the first round of the NBA playoffs. And that's all I kept hearing about. But what people are not talking about, all they're talking about is LeBron choke, failed, this, that, and the third. What they're not talking about is the fact that the Phoenix Suns are the number 2 seed in what is considered the toughest conference in the NBA, the Western Conference, which means they're not a crap team. They're a really good team. And they show that they're a really good team going up against the defending champions and taking it to the defending champions and advancing past the defending NBA champions. So this is a series right here where too much of the narrative was on LeBron and his shortcomings instead of on what Phoenix did to win this series 4-2 and to move on to start this series against the Denver Nuggets. And I feel like that's an injustice to the Suns because, again, they're the number 2 seed. They should be talked about a lot more than the fact that that LeBron, quote unquote, fell short and got eliminated for the first time in the first round in his career.
The one caveat I have to that is Anthony Davis got injured, right? So I think if Anthony Davis is healthy, this is a very different series, much closer. Maybe it goes 7 or whatever, but or maybe Lakers even win. Maybe they don't have a 7 seed if he and LeBron are healthier throughout the regular season. So I agree with what you're saying. Phoenix deserved a little bit more credit, but I also think that they got a little bit lucky that the Lakers were banged up and probably a little tired because you got to remember they had that huge run, go to the finals, and then it's not that much time off before the next season starts. And then unlike in hockey, they played almost a full, schedule. And then, then they have to play in the play-in round again, and so they have to win that. So it's a tough road to get back, especially if you have to play an extra game or so and you have injuries. So I'm not surprised that the Lakers had trouble, but it was interesting that some people were picking the Lakers to beat Phoenix before this series even started. I'm going to let Brian talk a little bit about his the Knicks, and then we'll move on to the conference semifinal.
Well, actually, I kind of wanted to talk about the Clippers-Mavericks series, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I feel like, look, I'm going to be honest. I've talked about the Knicks a lot on my podcast. If you want to hear my thoughts on that series, go listen to the Friday episode of Upon Further Review with Brian Brennan. But I love this Clippers-Mavericks series. I absolutely thought this was a great 7-game battle. The road team won the first 6 games. In game 6 of the series, in particular, Kawhi Leonard went absolutely ham. He scored 45 points, including some just ridiculously clutch baskets to put the game away for the Clippers. And then the Clippers won game 7 on their home floor by 15 points, despite Luka Doncic's best efforts. He scored 46 points in game 7, but it wasn't enough. This was a really fun matchup. These two teams met in the playoffs last year in the bubble, and the Clippers won that series in 6 games. So the Mavericks now have a lot of questions. Luka's amazing, obviously, but the talent around him could use some upgrading. Kristaps Porzingis, there's a lot of questions about him. Former Knick, obviously. A lot of questions about Porzingis, I would say. And some of the other guys, they only had 4 bench points in that game 7, which is pathetic. So they absolutely have to upgrade the talent around Luka Doncic if they want to compete in the Western Conference. But I absolutely loved the Clippers-Mavericks series. And I'm, like I said in the group chat, I really love all these series in the second round. I think these second round series are going to be great.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask the other two guys real quickly their favorite series in the second round. And then I know Brian likes all of them, so he can sort of talk about whatever ones that are left over. So we're going to start with Tim. Of these matchups here, which is the most interesting to you going forward?
Well, the obvious one is Milwaukee, Brooklyn, but the first 2 games have been really disappointing with the Harden injury and the terrible blowout tonight. I couldn't even watch the second half. I'm going to go ahead and choose Atlanta, Philly, just because, like you said, Atlanta doesn't get a lot of credit or hype, or at least before the last series. People discounted what they were doing a lot, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, they switched coaches in the middle of the year, and they didn't have the best record in the East, although they finished strong. So I think they can challenge Philly. Getting that first win is key and puts a lot of pressure on the 76ers, but just that great comeback that Philly had where they almost pulled it off, I think bodes well for the next game and the rest of the series. I think Philly is going to win. Just they've got too much talent. They're deep. They have a really experienced coach too. So I think Philly will win in 6 or 7, but Atlanta is an up and coming team, and I think they're going to show a lot of grit in the series. So that's probably an underrated series.
Got it. All right, Champ. I'll give you the second pick.
I think I'm going to try to make an effort because, again, with all the wrestling that I watch on my podcast, I'm going to try to make an effort to watch at least 2 of the games between Phoenix and Denver because I just spoke so passionately about Phoenix and how they didn't get a lot of credit for going out and winning a series that when you look at the numbers, they should win because of their seeding. So I want to look at Phoenix and see what they do against an even tougher team like Denver and see how they play against Denver. And I want to see how well this series goes. It's a 2-3 matchup. So that means that mathematically speaking, they're evenly matched, but math and paper, like what it says on paper doesn't necessarily equate to what happens on the court. So I want to see how that plays out between Phoenix. I want to see if Phoenix can go on a run and go deep into the playoffs, maybe go into the conference finals and face either Utah or the Clippers. I would like to see Phoenix versus the Clippers. I would like to see that matchup for the conference, to be honest with you. But my series I want to check out is Phoenix and Denver.
Yeah, so they just had an and one on a no-look pass from Chris Paul that made it 34-38, but Denver just came back and scored. So they're now up 40-34 with 8:56 left in the first half. The Winnipeg-Montreal game that I'm also watching here in the Man Cave just started overtime. They are tied 2-2. If Montreal can win this at home, they will sweep the Jets. Phoenix just hit a big bucket. They are now within 3. Again, 8:47 left in the first half. So it goes to speak to your point that it's going to be a very close potential series there. So, Brian, for waiting patiently, I'm giving you both of the other 2 series to do it. So you can choose whether you want to talk about the Bucks or the Clippers series first, and then finish it up with the other one.
I'll start with my favorite team, the Brooklyn Nets, and their series against the Milwaukee Bucks. I think a lot of people thought that whoever wins this series was going to win not only the Eastern Conference, but potentially the finals. And when James Harden went out 1 minute or 47 seconds into game 1, I think a lot of people thought, okay, this is going to be a really competitive, like this just evens the playing field even more. These are 2 really good teams, right? It hasn't quite worked out that way. The Brooklyn won game 1, but it was even I thought it was not even as close as the final scoreline indicated. And then they just absolutely kicked their ass tonight. Like that game wasn't even close at Barclays Center. They blew them out. They set a franchise record for 3-pointers made in a game. A dominating effort by the Nets at the Brooklyn Public Library, as I call it, Barclays Center. I see Montreal just scored.
And won the game in overtime.
Milwaukee's going to have to turn it around in these games in Milwaukee, or this is going to be a really short series. Brooklyn looks great. Durant is kicking ass. Kyrie Irving has been great all playoffs. Joe Harris.
I had a question about this series. Do you think without having, I know it's the idea of having a big 3 is great, right? But then you kind of have to give even playing time. You got to play through it. Do you think it's almost easier to have one of them out and just play through 2 players and you don't have that? Yeah.
Possibly in this situation. I mean, especially because, these guys, the Nets haven't played together. They've only played 7 games or whatever. At least in the regular season, they had only played 7 games together. So there wasn't much time to build chemistry. So I wonder if it's just Kyrie and Kevin Durant, because you got to remember, of the big three, they were the original two, and then Harden joined a little bit later. So I wonder if maybe the two of them being together will work. But this is a good Nets team. I underestimate how good this Nets team is outside of the big three. Blake Griffin has actually been very good for them in this playoffs, especially in game one. He absolutely crushed it. I hate to say it, but this Nets team can absolutely win the finals, bring the championship back to New Jersey for their fans. And I think this will be a good series. I wanted this to be a good series, but it's not looking that way. And as far as the Utah Clippers series goes, I am really excited about this series. I am really in on the Utah Jazz as far as Western Conference teams goes. I think they're a lot of fun to watch, and that's the team I'm watching from the Western Conference. I think they can win the Western Conference for sure. Rudy Gobert is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's right up. He's probably third, I would say. Or he's right up there with Embiid and Jokic among the best centers in the league. And of course, Donovan Mitchell's a great player as well. They've got the Bogdanovich the Wizards had Boyan. That's a good player in his own right, and a couple other good guys off the bench: Jordan Clarkson, O'Neal. They're a talented squad. I think they will beat the Clippers in 6 games. I don't trust the Clippers ever to get past the second round, and I expect that to continue this year. Kawhi Leonard is going to absolutely have to carry the the Clippers in the second round if they want to have any chance to beat Utah. I think Utah wins that series in 6 games, I would say. And I'm looking forward to that one. I think game 1 of that series is tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Last questions real quick, and then we'll speed around it. Who do you think is going to be in the Western Conference Finals, and who do you think is going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals? And I'll start off with Brian, and we'll go in reverse order.
Utah and Phoenix, and Philly and Brooklyn.
All right, Tim, what are your thoughts?
I'll go Philly, Brooklyn, Utah, and Denver.
Got it. And Champ, what are your thoughts?
Utah versus the Suns, and in the East, I think it'll be Philly versus Brooklyn.
Perfect. Awesome. I will stop the screen sharing there. I'm going to give each one of you guys an opportunity to give your final thoughts before I let you go. I'm going to start off with Tim. Thank you for helping us break down the Wizards this whole season, and maybe we'll have you on next week to talk a little bit more playoff basketball before I take another week off after that myself. But Tim, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, it was a great season. It was fun covering it. Started out very depressing. But as the season got more optimistic, so did our show. So I'm glad we stuck with it and had some success at the end. And I'm excited to cover it next year and hopefully talk about the playoffs a little bit this year and whatever the draft and offseason brings too.
Sounds good. Well, thank you as always, Tim, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, definitely. Have a good night, guys.
All right. And Champ, let people know what's happening on the No Spots podcast. Let people know about the Twitch handle. I'll give you a shout out on Twitch live right now, but let people know what you're talking about on the No Spots podcast.
Right. So we're back on our normal Wednesday night for Wrestle Chat Wednesdays. One of the topics is that New Japan has crowned a new world heavyweight champion. It is somebody I did not expect. And I will go on the record and say I was wrong to pick against this person. So we will talk about that and other topics this Wednesday at 7 p.m. And then on the podcast this Saturday, I will do a quick recap of the New Japan event Dominion that took place this morning, as well as we'll have a recap of the week in review. And we will also be previewing Hell in a Cell, which is coming up this Sunday on Peacock for WWE with myself and Sid. That'll be at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/TrueNoSpots.
Yes, I'm giving all of the links right now. If people want to go to SportsOTHP.com, click the podcast partners button, and then click on the No Spots podcast, it'll take you all the way to all their latest podcasts. They're great. I'm also putting a link in chat for people who want to click on that. And definitely give them a follow over at True No Spots Pod to follow them on Twitch. And Champ, as always, we really appreciate your time and being a part of this show and also being a moderator. And hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening and great podcast coming up. And we'll talk to you next week to recap a little bit more playoff basketball.
It's been so much fun covering this Wizards team with you guys all season. You guys are like family, and I appreciate y'all, and I love you guys. Appreciate y'all. Have a good night.
Yes, you are family to us as well. I really appreciate it. And thank you again for being a part of this team. And that leaves us with Brian Brennan, who's already briefly talked about his podcast. I'm also going to share a link to his page, but let people know what was on last Friday's and this Monday's episode of what you're going to talk about upcoming.
Yeah, so like I said, if you want to hear like my really in-depth thoughts on the Knicks losing to the Hawks and my thoughts on their season, I highly encourage you to listen to the Friday episode. As I described it, it's a love letter to the 2021 New York Knicks. So I highly encourage you to go check out Friday's episode. In addition to the episode I dropped today, which features my good friend Ethan Winter, who is a big Red Sox fan. We recapped the Yankees getting swept by the Red Sox this week at the stadium, which was a lot of fun, even though Ethan talked a lot of trash. I encourage everybody to go check it out on the podcast partners button or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get it. Go check it out. And I'd like to give 2 shout outs. First to the U.S. men's national team for winning the Nations League last night in a crazy game against Mexico. I'm so proud of them, and I'm proud to be an American because of the men's national team for that win last night. And shout out to the Islanders as well for beating the Bruins tonight, going up 3-2 in that series. And let's see if they can close it out in Game 6 at the Coliseum on Wednesday. That's all I got to say. Thanks for having me on, Robbie.
All right, real quickly, because we do it every week, I just wanted to see DC United. They did play a couple of games. So one was against Inter Miami. Is that right? Is that
yeah?
Right?
It's Inter Miami. Yep.
Inter Miami, and they won that 3-0. They also lost to the Philadelphia Union, but I think we didn't talk about that one. They lost 1-0. So 1-1, lost 1, and then Saturday, June 9th, we'll play that Inter Miami team again. So that's on Saturday, June 19th at 8 p.m. is their next game. So I just wanted to at least give them a little shout out for DC United. And thank you for bringing soccer into our podcast. And we'll talk to you next week for some more NBA recap.
No problem. Have a good night, guys.
All right, you too.
Take it easy.
Later, guys.
All right, 11 o'clock on the dot, CP3. I tried to get it all in. We had a lot to cover. I'm happy we were able to break down the end of the Wizards season and cover that very exciting season from start to finish. Not many podcasts talk Wizards and other DC sports as well. Most of them are either just Wizards or whatever. So we're one of the few that do this. And I'm happy that we had that team, and the team is fantastic as always. I want to thank them for being a part of this show. And I think next week we'll do a little more NBA recap on how those series are going. I don't know, Carol, what your plans are for the week that I'm not going to be here, but I'm sure that they'd be willing to come on and talk to you about basketball as well. But I just want to thank all of them for being a part of this show this past season as well. Carol, any final thoughts on anything you heard about basketball or anything at all before we end tonight's show?
No, not really. I've been doing a lot of, with the Washington football team, with the OTAs. I've been, reading some articles and looking at some film on some of the rookies that we've signed and some of the free agent additions that they've added. And it's going to be a real interesting season. So stay tuned for great football coverage coming soon once the training camp starts, I believe, in about a month. So just be on the lookout for that. Still down at Waldorf Honda selling cars. So if you're in the market, the market's kind of crazy right now with the microchip shortage and the car shortage. But if you're in the market for a new, used, pre-owned, certified vehicle, come on and holler at me because we're going to get the deal done. Make sure we get you what you want and what you want to pay for. So come holler at me at Waldorf Honda, 2450 Crane Highway, Waldorf, Maryland. You can also hit me up about the SportsOTHP apparel, tees. You can always check out the SportsOTHP apparel page or website and click on go to sports.
Oh, Zach, I want to tell you, Zach was wearing his Manta Ray shirt yesterday, and I loved it on him. So definitely, we have all sizes for that, including kids and youth sizes as well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that. My own son is repping our merch, and it's adorable. So I'll have to get some pictures of that.
Zach, honorary member of the team. Appreciate that. But as always, appreciate y'all tuning in. We got a lot going on. Obviously, they'll be off in a couple of weeks. I've been busy with the, selling cars and everything, but we got some things in the works. So stay tuned. You about to get back to getting that regular daily dose of Sports OTHP with the videos and I'm even trying to get back into writing again. So who knows, man? Be on the lookout. Got so much going on. Just check us out Sunday nights also at the Bar Radio, streaming live. We was off this past Sunday yesterday, but we'll be back streaming live next Sunday, 6 p.m., bringing you the best current events, politics, independent music, entertainment news, and just a whole bunch of tomfoolery with alcohol involved. So check us out. I'm always going to end my feed with some independent music videos from at the Bar Radio. But as always, we appreciate y'all tuning in. DC Sports about the politics. It's not just a catchphrase. It's not just a motto. It's what we do. And we catch you next week. And we out.
The recording has stopped.
All right, we're gonna raid KR Acoustic right now. Thanks for tuning in on the Twitch feed.